Leader Fan Radio Network, and KFAN.com. 2 minutes and 19 seconds past the hour of 3 o'clock Central Daylight Time. Welcome back. It is a Tuesday edition of the Bumper to Bumper program on a now kind of overcast Tuesday afternoon here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. I want it known right now, Guardsy, I voted not once, not twice, but 3 times for Kyler Murray today. 3 different precincts.
No sticker, I don't believe you.
Well,
I know you refused the sticker.
I declined the stickers. Mark Rosen didn't, although he made a big production in Chad Abbott's office of throwing his away. But he had to make sure that everybody saw that he had the sticker.
Of course.
How many of you in the audience wrote in Kyler Murray today? Because the winner today, declared, right, is Kyler Murray. I think sooner than most of us expected has been declared the obvious, the starting quarterback for your Minnesota Vikings to start the season. What makes it the timing interesting is it possible that we're seeing a little Mike Zimmer in KOC with this declaration? Well, here's my theory. In fact, I think I have BringMeTheSports.com did kind of a synthesis.
Yes.
What Vikings insiders are saying about the quarterback battle. And they quote all the usual suspects that you would think. Kevin Seifert, who's going to join us second segment from the new Winter Park, with his reaction. All what we've heard, certainly talked about yesterday. What was that? Nobody's winning the job. Yeah, I mean, it's still Kyler's to lose. We all assume that, but my God. Maybe even one of the theories was the gap was closing between the two of them. There was as much fear, loathing, and trepidation about either choice among the Jackals yesterday as we've had so far since the Vikings announced that they had signed Kyler Murray to a deal, to a 1-year free agent contract. So was this the KOC plan all along, or is this KOC saying, bleep you? You can mutter all you want about what you think you see. We're doubling down on Kyler Murray. Now, the comeback to that is, what's the choice? In all seriousness, what are you going to do? Let's be clear for me on one point. And I am not a number 9 hater. Critical, yes, not a hater. But wasn't it fairly apparent that the key attribute, whoever started at the position for the Vikings in 2026, was simply that he wasn't named J.J. McCarthy? They were not going. They got scared. KOC got terrified because there's no one else to fire, right? You got the previous general manager out, presumably still blamed for screwing up the quarterback situation, which I don't understand why it's all on him. More on that later, for not the first time. But I just don't think, other than McCarthy through the offseason and the first, what do we have, 2 weeks of practice so far? Whatever it's been?
Pretty much, yeah.
Just going like, oh my God, look at this guy. He's a changed quarterback. The offseason meetings had to be, we can't afford, as an organization, I can't afford as a head coach to take the risk, right now at least, that McCarthy can avoid what he couldn't avoid, or I couldn't avoid being the quarterback whisperer with him a year ago, right? Don't you think that's in a sense faint praise? It doesn't say Kyler Murray has taken this job by the throat, by the short hairs. He has made it what looked pretty apparent as an obvious decision, a slam dunk decision. I don't think we've seen that, or even Seifert, as recently as, well, what he wrote today in reaction was not really good last couple of days for Kyler, none of the quarterbacks look particularly good. And obviously Carson Wentz isn't in this. Now, it was also interesting to me that your guy, KOC, declared J.J. McCarthy the backup QB.
That's right.
He seemed to go out of his way to do that because we had speculation as recently as yesterday from people saying, I wonder if it's going to be, do you rule out Wentz? What if J.J. goes into a pout? That's going to be the next question, right? How will J.J. react? Will he say all the things he's supposed to say? Decision was made. I have no control over it. All I have control over is continuing to be the best quarterback I can be. And if the opportunity presents itself for me to play, I'm going to do the best I can to help this team win football games. Right? Isn't that what he's supposed to say?
Yes.
Will he?
Probably.
Will he pout internally?
Maybe. But he also should get over it because he has no one to blame but himself.
Well, he's got no leverage.
Yeah.
Right now he's got no leverage. Despite he no longer can live off of his name. That's over. He might have been able to. He was doing that last year. He can't do that anymore. It doesn't matter who he is. It doesn't matter that he hoisted the Lombardi at the University of Michigan, correct? Didn't they win the national championship?
They did.
Was that Jim Harbaugh still the coach?
Yes. For about 10 minutes after the game.
Was that respect the process?
No.
Oh, no, that was when he was at Stanford.
Back at Stanford.
That's right.
He was about to take
still one of my
San
favorite
Francisco jobs.
sound bites of all time.
For sure.
So does the timing, it's possible to me that KOC said, I'll show you guys. You guys think he's starting to fade a little bit? You guys think no, I'll declare it today. Or it could be the other theory that's been advanced. Well, if he is struggling, we got to stop with the pretense. I got to give him more reps.
Mm-hmm.
I have to give myself and this staff the best chance to get the best out of what he might offer. Today is about the perfect day for talkbacks. We have not used talkbacks much lately. Today should be a brilliant day. So KFAN.com, correct?
iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio, I apologize. The app. Click on the microphone. You have up to 30 seconds to offer your reaction to this. And there are some angry McCarthy obos out there.
It's crazy.
They are bitter.
Yes.
They think it has been a conspiracy.
Which they're probably right.
Probably has been. Yep. But again, they can't forget what happened last year that put JJ in this vulnerable position. And I think the head coach feeling that he too might be in a vulnerable position. If the Vikings don't make the playoffs this season and win a game, KOC would start year 6 next year without a playoff victory. That's almost unprecedented.
That's not good.
In the National Football League. I'm not saying he's coaching for his job, but I think collars might get pretty tight. Anything else you want to add to that?
Well, you mentioned the theories behind it, and I think it would be the latter, if I heard you correctly, that he's not doing great. We need to just give him the job and really work with him and get him ready.
Yeah.
Because the word I heard multiple times, other than dialogue, collaboration, and quarterback journey, the other word I heard
today.
Yes.
Well, did we ever hear it? Oh, you have the soundbite.
No, I'm saying the other word I heard besides all of those was projection. Projection.
Yeah.
We can project. We think we can project what he can be if given the necessary tools and given the coaching and everything that goes along with it.
What does that suggest?
That he hasn't done it yet.
Exactly.
It's not a decision that can stand up on the first 2 weeks of, you guys have all been here. Kyler's been electric. He's been great. He's been head and shoulders above. And I do buy the fact that, because KOC did talk about this a little bit, that you'll do a heavy install day and you're throwing a bunch of stuff at him, and that might be the day where he's not very good, and then the next day he bounces back and he's better. I do think there's stuff that we don't necessarily see or understand that they are doing throughout this process. But he just kept saying, I mean, it was 2 or 3 times, I don't know if other people heard it, that we feel like there's a projection now of what he can be. And that, to me, is a little dangerous and a little scary.
Texter Greg, Lakeville. Dan, maybe it was the GM who mandated that he make the choice and move forward. Where's the Glenn Mason sounder? You're wrong. You're wrong. Either you're wrong or we have been fed a series of deceptions and distortions from the media jackals who've covered this team since the day KOC was hired. They've told us over and over, anything that happens at the quarterback position, anything, is really being run by the head coach, even though he's not the general manager. Now, we can get into the weeds about whether the GM is responsible for miscalculating the ability to keep Daniel Jones, etc. We've talked about that before. But stop with the nonsense that the previous GM mandated anything regarding J.J. McCarthy. I just don't buy it. There's no reason to buy it. It's convenient, and it's kind of unfair to the person who's gone because, again, there's nobody left to defend the guy who's gone. That's just sort of the way it works. All right, let's get a break in early. Let's get the Seifert instant reaction from TCO Performance Center. Hopefully we get some talkbacks today, as I said. Former St. Cloud Police Chief Blair Anderson will kind of change it up at about 4:30 this afternoon. More details on that later. And a lot more ground to cover on what now should be a very fast-moving program.
Bumper to Bumper with Dan Barreiro.
You can just tell when he's, walking the halls in our building, just the energy. There's moments in time where there's comfort from Kyler in the scheme. He had some really high completion days where, he was able to show some really, really good understanding of just putting the ball in play, playing with great timing, rhythm. You guys have seen him be explosive when there's opportunities there, but you've also seen him check the ball down and put the ball in play and get us from a 1st and 10 to a 2nd and 3. And then, as you continue to look at the body of work through those 10 days, what jumped out is what could be. And at some point in this thing, knowing the timeline we had and knowing that we needed to do some sort of a projection based upon a lot of those things, and then as the installs piled up and you'd see a little bit of a slowdown from a processing standpoint, it would then maybe the next day there was an immediate response, and just some of those things bode really, really well for his role now as we lock in on this thing and try to do the best we can to prepare him, as well as the one-on-one that can take place with me and him, and as well as doing things that he's comfortable with within the confines of how we want to be with our philosophy on offense.
What's up, boys? Hot take, Carson Wentz is better than J.J. McCarthy at this point in their careers. Not saying J.J. won't eventually be better than Carson, but currently I'd rather have Carson as the number 2, but I also hate the Vikings, so
wow,
I don't care.
Well, I appreciate his interest despite not caring. That's the talkback line. We hope you abuse it today. I don't mean by saying anything that's not usable. I'm saying by giving us the opportunity to continue to lock in on it throughout today's program. iHeartRadio app, click on the microphone, and you have a chance to respond, as I said, however you would like, within 30 seconds. Well, let's start with Kevin Seifert, who is at TCO Performance Center, I'm presuming, in the wake of the big news today, with perhaps an answer from him on the question or the observation talkback guy made. Can you make a football argument now that the obvious decision has been announced that right now Carson Wentz is a better backup quarterback option to Kyler Murray?
Instead of J.J. McCarthy?
Yes.
The way I would put it is you have a better idea of what you're going to get if you put Carson Wentz into a game, if Kyler Murray needs to come out, than you would with J.J. McCarthy. But I can't say for certain that J.J. McCarthy is the backup right now. There's a long way to go until the season begins, so you can't assume that it'll stay that way through the rest of the preseason. I mean, they have every right to watch how he reacts to this and see how he practices. And knowing that Carson Wentz has a pretty strong floor, like the minimum of what you're going to get from him, and you also know from last year that you did not need to give him a lot of reps in order for him to function in a game. And Kevin O'Connell has brought that up repeatedly. So no, I wouldn't necessarily say for sure that they'd be better off with Wentz, but they would if they needed to have somebody in there, but they'd have a better idea of what they were going to get.
Let me read you a cross-section of comments, things written by several of you who cover this team on a daily basis.
Oh, my gosh.
This was post the Sunday night event. Neither of the Vikings quarterbacks have made it blatantly clear that they should be the Vikings QB1. I think that was from Matthew Collar. Alec Lewis. Murray's performances have not been perfect by any stretch. McCarthy has outperformed the veteran on a couple of occasions. Kevin Seifert on SportsCenter this morning. Really what you have going into that third week of camp is neither one of these guys has jumped up and said, this is my job, I'm going to be the starter, so the competition will continue. One of my theories I advanced in the first segment is this might be KOC's Mike Zimmer bleep you moment, where he sees all this chatter and he says, oh, you don't think one guy has separated himself enough? I'll show you. I'm going to move up the date that I make the announcement. I'm going to announce it today that Kyler Murray is the guy. Any chances of that theory being accurate?
It's possible. My theory that I think has a better chance of being accurate is that it's something he even said today and acknowledged that he had always planned to make the decision right around now, which is 9 or 10 practices in, and give them time to set up their preseason. Now, that I don't know if that makes it any better or worse than your explanation, because if it was an open competition and everything's organic and you want, somebody to win it, like that didn't happen. And if they plan for that to be the case, you wouldn't necessarily zero in on a day you're going to announce it when it all starts. But that's what he said. And so maybe he really meant is that they had hoped to have it ready by now. They'd hoped to be able to make a decision. But, any person watching, I would say the last few practices would not say that this was like a rousing crescendo by Kyler Murray to the throne. And maybe that's not the real world. Maybe that's what movies are in terms of quarterback competitions and winning and losing, and that there's a lot. The expectation that somebody was just going to jump up and say, this is my job, I am the quarterback of this team, was not realistic, especially when they're splitting snaps, but it certainly didn't happen.
All right, to your point, let me offer up a third theory, a third possibility, that KOC noticed that the guy they've anointed hasn't really consistently separated himself, and he said, I got to stop this nonsense of splitting the reps. If we know that's who we're going to end up with, and we know it's not going to be McCarthy to start the season, it just isn't. They're afraid to do that again. They've got too much on the line this year. Then maybe that's the impetus here. They said, let's just cut to the chase. He needs the reps. We're seeing how badly that he needs a more than a 50-50 or even 60-40 share of the reps.
I think that, and that goes along with the idea that of what we were talking about earlier, that they kind of pinpointed this time. If they wanted to make sure that they had what they believe is enough time to integrate the named starter into the offense and start game planning around him and start tweaking things to his strengths and moving away from some things that maybe he doesn't do well, like this would be the time. That coincides with the idea that he most definitely could use the every rep that they could give him without exhausting him before the start of the season, because, and we've seen this with Kirk Cousins. We saw it with Sam Darnold. It's not new to Kyler Murray, but there is a steep learning curve, and you can have some good days like he did in the beginning of OTAs and then the beginning of training camp, and then it can start to be more of a burden, and you start going through a slog a little bit, and that's where he's at. And so, I don't think that what we've seen the past few days tells me he's not going to be good in this offense or they're not going to be a good team. But I do think that at the very least, you have to say that he needs as much work as they can possibly give him. And maybe that's what they realized when they sort of targeted this time anyway. Maybe they hoped that it would have been very clear that he was, head and shoulders above JJ. And while I think you can watch these practices to see who the most skilled guy is, the performance level, I wouldn't say has had much difference.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Kevin Seifert at TCO Performance Center, in the wake of the news earlier today, made official by KOC that Kyler Murray is indeed the starter. Is there any chance, I don't even know who represents J.J. McCarthy, you'll tell me, but is there any chance that he gets aggressive from the get-go here and says, okay, we kind of knew this was coming. There's no future for JJ in this organization. That's becoming increasingly clear. let's give him an out. Let's find some other place for him to go. Or do you think the agent would understand we really got no leverage right now because my guy, as much as I might like him, really has not done enough at this level to make that all that attractive an option?
Yeah, Brian Arald is the agent, and so it's I can't rule it out. I have an announced piece coming out soon where that was one of the questions that we had to answer, and you can't rule out that at some level, he or the people in his camp would understand that when you get replaced in the off season, which is essentially what this is, that even if you're the number 10 overall pick, 2 years ago, that organization is telling you what you need to know. Yep. Now, it's possible, Kyler Murray's played less than 10 games in 2 of his past 3 years, and so you don't want to be morbid about it. But if you're JJ McCarthy and you say, I got a decent chance of getting on the field, and what I really want to do is when I get on the field, I want to have I want to be in a system that I am experienced in, players that I know, coaches that I know, and just try to make the best of it. It doesn't mean that I'm going to win the starting job and be the starter here for the next 10 years in that scenario. But if you want to even if you're just trying to increase your value, your best chance probably, unless you feel internally that these guys have written you off and you have no chance with them. But then, a lot of times quarterback needy teams, you may not want to be traded to them. It could, as lack of a future as he might have here, that doesn't mean you go somewhere else in a trade and automatically that's a better situation for you just because it's different. So long story short, I can't rule out the possibility that there might be some emotions that would drive some thoughts along those lines. But from a practical standpoint, it might make sense for him just to bear down. And assuming when and not if he gets on the field at some point this season, he makes the most of it.
I did not get to hear KOC today. Did the subject of how this decision affects who plays how much in preseason games get handled? Was that discussed?
A little bit. He said both guys are going to play.
Okay.
So I take that to mean pretty similar to what we saw last year and the year before, where the starters play one series, as long as it's a meaty series, I guess, 8 or 9 play drive or whatever you want to call it. And then the second team comes in after that. So the assumption there is that Kyler Murray will start Saturday against the Giants, and the first team will play the first series, and you hope that it's not a 3-and-out in terms of getting some reps in, but that it won't be too extensive. It's not like it's going to have an effect on the competition. And then JJ McCarthy and the second team will come in after that.
Is it possible too that the best solution for McCarthy is playing a lot in this preseason, even if it, again, means you're running the risk of injury? You got Wentz sitting there as well, and you can make the argument that he just needs to play, even if it's preseason ball, and the more you put him out there, the better idea you might get about where this might go.
Yes. As much as we talk about Kyler Murray needing reps in practice, JJ McCarthy needs game reps in the NFL. He's at like 243 pass attempts in the first 2 seasons, 10 starts, and until Kyler Murray gets hurt, no more during the regular season now. So this is time for him to get, and we all know preseason is not the same from a competitive standpoint, even from a defense standpoint, in terms of reading and understanding what's coming. But look, we don't have to be experts in X's and O's to understand he needs reps and practice throwing the ball, in live action. And, the hope would be that would kind of be part of rectifying some of the accuracy issues he has, just repping in game speed, because preseason is game speed, even if it's low speed, still more than practice. And giving him every rep that you possibly can in those games, I think would be preferable. And Carson Wentz didn't, I don't think he played a lick of preseason last year because they didn't sign him until after the preseason, and he was fine. So, yeah, I'm not saying that I don't know if they're planning to play Carson Wentz, but I would not play him. I don't think that it would make sense to play him at the expense of any preseason action you can get from McCarthy.
Makes sense to me. 701 guy writes, "This is simple to me. We have 3 NFL-level quarterbacks right now. Last year with Brosmer and JJ, we had 3/4 of an NFL quarterback. No Brosmer option, with all due apologies to Guardsy, is awesome, and we're in way better position to win games. Do you agree with 701 guy?
Yes, they're in better position if they go through one of those seasons like they had last year,
right,
or in 2023 where they're running through quarterbacks and all of a sudden your third guy is playing. So if you had a choice between your third guy playing being Carson Wentz or Jaron Hall, as in it was in 2023, or Max Brosmer as it was last year, you'd say you definitely would pick Carson Wentz, and he would give you a better chance in that scenario. The real question, and now that the competition is on the other side, or on the other side of the competition, to ask is just like, how good can Kyler Murray be in this offense? You know, we have spent all this time trying to insist that he's the best quarterback on the team, but there's a big distinction between being the best quarterback on any roster and being a quarterback who is ready to lead a powerful offense in a tough division that's in a season that starts with back-to-back Packers-Bears. I mean, that's the issue now facing, I think that's now number one on the priority list. Is how good can he be? And do they have it at quarterback advantage or an offensive advantage over any of the four or any of the other three teams in the NFC North? And that gets back to our discussion about the bookmakers and the odds makers and ESPN FPI in terms of putting the Vikings last out of four teams in the NFC North. That's the question now, is how good is he going to be in it? We have known and now know for certain that he's the best quarterback on the roster, but what does that mean, if anything?
It's faint praise, potentially. What do you believe is the Vikings' vision of how much Murray uses his legs? Is it a belief that we want him to make plays from the pocket like we want every other quarterback? We want to take advantage of his escapability? Or do you think deep down they have designs on making his running an actual weapon?
I think maybe a little bit of that, but I think what they're excited about genuinely is that he can, the phrase "make things right." When somebody doesn't get blocked, because of a confusion in pass protection, or just somebody getting beat in pass protection, or when a receiver runs the wrong route, or when the defense just has a really good call for the offense. But that is a skill set that his skill set to make it right, to run and just make a play to get a first down, or at least positive yards, or avoid a negative play. Has been his superpower in the NFL. And I don't know that if that's happening a lot, then maybe they'll be worried that their scheme is not functioning the way it should. But it is a genuine weapon and something they do not want to discourage. And it wouldn't matter. He would probably do it anyway. It's just ingrained in the way he plays football. But there'll be a balance. But I really think that they genuinely hope that in those situations they'll have an advantage that they haven't had in the previous 4 years that O'Connell's been here. And really, going back, I guess you'd have to think for a minute that, when have they had a quarterback that can make it right in the way that he can?
It didn't sound again like reading secondhand the way the head coach laid it out. He did make it more on potential and promise, not so much on what he's already shown, right? It wasn't like this declaration of, my God, the way he has just blown us away already in this short period of time with what he seems capable of doing, right? It almost, I don't know what I expect. I don't even know what's fair. I don't even know if it matters. We're not going to remember any of this probably in a month when the season begins, but I don't know. I don't, even for KOC, it was Mr. Positive and Mr. Word Salad. I didn't come out of this thinking he sold this really effectively today.
No, and I wondered, because he had a long opening statement, and when was he going to get to the reasons why Kyler is their starter? And he did get to that. He said he's shown enough, and he's been more. And he had mentioned before that he's further along from a mental standpoint in terms of taking in information and being able to churn it out than he thought he would be at this juncture. And so he did say some positive things about him. But if he had said this guy has just been awesome this camp and impressed us, and the whole team is cited, that would have not been credible, I don't think. And I think it was kind of his way. He wasn't going to say, he had a terrible practice or this was that or whatever. But that was his way of just, I think, keeping things in the world of the real, and saying that they've seen enough. And I thought that, like, shown enough. I think that was his, the phrase that stuck out to me, is that he's shown enough. And if I were in his shoes, I probably would have said something along those lines as well. I don't know that he needed to get up there and say, I know everybody's watched the practices and I know everybody thinks,
yes,
that, and I agree with you, it hasn't been great, but we're going to go with it. I don't think it was realistic to expect that, but I think he kept it in the world of, these are defensible statements. Now, would it be nice if he had, if the performance had been such that he could be glowing about it? Sure, but it wasn't. And so and it's in public. It all happened in public. Most of these practices have fans sitting right there, and they're all taking video and posting it to online. And so everybody knows the truth. And so he stayed within that.
When it hasn't looked good from him as recently as Sunday, what's been missing? Is it decision making? Is it accuracy? What has made all of you guys, even you who had said from the beginning, Murray clearly has more talent, more skill, but you've come to the conclusion that you weren't necessarily seeing it all played out that way, or revealing itself that way on the field. What has been missing when he hasn't played as well?
The best way I can put it is when they've had full pads on. I think they've had today's maybe the fourth or fifth day of full pads, and that means the pass rush is more or less live. They don't always have their starting offensive line in there or what have you. And when the rush is getting in there, and when it's not game speed, but it's as full practice speed as you're going to get, and when the clock is is moving up a little bit and quickening, he has not always seen what's happening downfield. And I don't necessarily mean that from a physical standpoint, but just been able to stay in the pocket and let the play develop. And so sometimes he has to get out of there, and sometimes I think he just is getting out of there and either throwing it away or throwing an interception or whatever. And so there's been a lot of practices where there wasn't pressure on him, and you're seeing a lot of really good throws. And so I have viewed that as sort of a function of when you know academically what the play call is, and what the routes are, but you still haven't taken many reps in a game type environment or a full speed environment where you're having to quicken your processing and quicken your decision making. And you're not thinking through like, okay, this guy's going to be here and this guy's going to be here. It's just rote, it. That's when you probably aren't escaping the pocket, or you're not throwing wildly, or you're not missing the guys that are open.
Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com. Are we certain we're going to carry 3 quarterbacks on the 53?
I would think so. I guess it always depends on who the third would be. You could probably, get away with getting Carson Wentz onto the practice squad if you really wanted to. But given, I've always said, it was a few years ago, 2023, when they went through all the quarterbacks, ended up with Jaron Hall starting a couple games, and then had to go out and get Josh Dobbs right away off the street and have him play. And talking to Mark Wilf the following offseason, we asked him, do you give, given how do you evaluate the season with all these quarterbacks? Do you kind of grade it on a curve knowing that so many guys got hurt? And he said, no, I don't, because it's the staff's and the coach's responsibility to make sure whoever we put on the field, wherever he is on the depth chart, can help us win games. And so I took that as one of the more direct things that Mark Wilf has ever said from a football perspective. And it's interesting that after that, I think they've always had at least 3 on the roster. They have not, and they put more into who's going to be that third guy when they can. And I would just say that if they're in a spot once again where they're having to run out somebody who really shouldn't be playing, that's it would be an unfortunate pattern based on what the owner said previously. So long story short, I would think that they will do what they can, whatever they need to do from a roster perspective, to make sure they have 3 good quarterbacks, what they view as 3 good quarterbacks available to them at any given time.
Last item for today. It strikes me that everything that KOC does needs to be about unleashing, well, always the quarterback's in the middle of it, but more than anybody else, Justin Jefferson. I'm looking at Jefferson's numbers. Last year, he was down 19 receptions. He was down over like 2.5 yards on average. Targets were down double digits. He had 2 touchdown catches last year. So isn't that the deal the rest of this training camp? It's whether you're talking about this alleged strategic change in the running game or what you're doing with the quarterback, it's about what are the steps we can take to give the best player on our offense a chance to be the best player.
Yes, and I think the first step was to use the word that O'Connell was talking about, to elevate the quarterback position. Mm-hmm. And regardless of where we end up deciding Kyler Murray should be in the NFL rankings or how good he can make this offense, he's probably better than anybody that they ran out there last year. So that they have already done a little bit of that. And I agree, like the rest, that's going to be a key thing to judge on. And Kyler, like he does, like we've seen it. It felt like I wish I had kept track of this instead of just reps, but I feel like he's targeted Justin, significantly. Like he's trying, and a lot of people were ripping him for the jump ball he threw that at the end of a 2-minute drill that Justin Jefferson came down with. But I took that as like a sign that he's going to trust him, and that is something you have to do with Justin. And he has the arm talent to kind of layer a ball in there that maybe JJ didn't display last year. So I think they've taken a step towards that. If they are anywhere close to where they were at the end of last year with him, at all points Bolton out to get him to 1,000 yards for the season, then that will have been a massive fail. And so I think they are a little bit ahead of that just by having a quarterback that's better than anybody that they had last year. I don't know how much better, but I do think they've elevated that, and as a result, elevated Justin's chances for a better season this year as well.
Clayton from Rochester, did KOC break the news to JJ by tossing him a Seifert-like bucket hat and a Microsoft Surface?
Wow. JJ has a bucket hat. I converted him. I'd like to think I converted him and all the other players who use bucket hats during their walkthroughs when they don't have helmets. But so I did note that JJ is already wearing a bucket hat, so he probably did not have to do that. But yes, they did have a conversation this morning, and they will go from there. When
will you, as a member of the Jackal community, have your first chance to talk directly with the winner and the loser of this alleged quarterback competition?
We expect to talk to Kyler later today after practice. JJ, TBD. We'll see how that goes. We didn't get word one way or the other on that.
Lastly, after this QB decision, are JJ and Kyler going to sit next to each other, or will they continue to sit on opposite sides of the room?
Well, it's a small quarterback room, so I don't know how far apart they actually are. But they'll have to figure out how to coexist, and I'm sure they will. But even if Carson Wentz has to stand in between them.
Well, you got something to write about. You've already written a lot of it, and then now it's all the reaction. So at least there probably was already a certain ennui setting in, like, okay, we're repeating the same story over and over. Now at least the story has been advanced, right?
Yes, you can't overwrite quarterbacks, I found. Like, nobody gets tired of a quarterback story.
They say they are. They say they are, but they're not. They lie when they say it. You're 100% right. Thank you, my friend. We will chat soon.
Okay, Dan.
Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Keep the talkbacks coming. I have to believe there's going to be a lot of reaction, which is interesting in a sense because we kind of all knew this is where we were headed, but it's still different when it's declared.
I think this is setting up the Vikings for another mediocre season where it'll be obvious Kyler isn't the long-term play. You still have no additional clarity on McCarthy. Vikings, you should have rolled out McCarthy to find out what you got. Either he thrives or the Vikings get a high draft pick next year. That being said, I love to see it. Bears are going to repeat as division champs. Caleb becomes the obvious best QB in division. Bear down, baby.
I am sick and tired of listening to all the colorful metaphors from KOC. It's time to put up or shut up. The guillotine will be waiting at the end of the year if this team doesn't see some playoff success. By the way, I love your show. Listen to it every day. Good job.
KOC never wanted McCarthy as his quarterback. It was all Kwesi. The proof is when McCarthy tore his meniscus. That is not a season-ending injury. KOC was just looking for excuses to keep him off the field.
That's some interesting.
Good afternoon. Tom from Rosemount. Just wanted to chime in on the quarterback controversy. Everyone keeps saying that it was a close competition and no one pulled away from anyone. But no one here is an expert. These are just sideline reporters. These are people watching practice. These are fans chiming in. The coaches know what they're seeing. They know what they're seeing and hearing in meetings. They know what they're seeing on the field. They know basically everything that we don't see. We should trust that he's making the right decision.
Very good cross-section there, talkbacks. Seifert kind of called out there in that last one. I love that. Do you have a burner 952 account that I'm not familiar with?
I don't think so. No. I used to have a 952 number.
Kyler Murray, 12. Carson Wentz, 9. J.J. McCarthy, 7. Those are the number of games missed due to injury last year. Mark my words, Max Brosmer will start for the Vikings before this season is done. Very interesting thought. But it is worth reminding people that Kyler does get hurt, and JJ's gotten hurt a lot in just 2 seasons. There's no question about that. Tom from Savage, what could be more Minnesota Vikings that in a draft that produces 5 to 6 starting quarterbacks, we get the one benched in year 3? And he is benched. Effectively, this is a benching.
Yeah.
Now, you could say it was already set up when the Murray decision was made, but this is when it becomes official.
Wasn't he also the first-round pick to miss the entire rookie season with injury?
He did make that history.
That was a nice distinction for 9.
The Guillotine guy writes, another 952 guy needs a therapist.
I think we are his therapy. He likes our show.
763 guy, anyone know Kyler's playoff record?
0-1.
It's the same as KOC's, or no, it's KOC lost 2.
KOC's 0-2.
0-2, that's right.
Yeah.
There's 2.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Perfect match, one could say.
So far, something's got to give.
Maybe somebody, they both get the breakthrough at the same time. John, the mail carrier, kind of wondering what kind of clipboard JJ will have. Will he crust it with diamonds and with 9, or is he just an Office Max guy and stick with the generic one? There goes his face paint endorsement. Now, that's an interesting question. Can you, with a straight face, do the face paint if you're the backup quarterback? I guess if you're the backup, you could say, well, I'm one play away, so I got to have the face paint just in case I need to get out there. And I got to look good.
Yep.
Right? I got to look good if I'm going to be in that role.
I think you just answered your question.
Yeah, I think I did, unfortunately, even though the whole face paint thing was kind of amusing as it played out.
Well, it's one of those things.
Last year.
If he's throwing for 330 and 3 every week, the face paint's epic. When he's not, it becomes something to make fun of him about. Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing.
Yes.
The face paint's
no
awesome.
Question. Yeah.
If he's leading you down for a fourth quarter touchdown.
Yeah. I think it was, I was more suspicious of him than I would be someone else because of the other stuff that seemed to be
I get it.
About JJ wanting to play the position rather than be the quarterback. I want to do the things we think of that are cool when you're a quarterback. Just, you go out and play, and like I said, then no one's going to care. No one's going to care. You're going to care if you have a nose ring, for God's sake. Are there any NFL players with nose rings?
I feel like your guy, Caleb Williams, would be the choice.
Yeah, maybe.
Because he had the nails going on.
That's true.
He's got the fancy phone.
That's a good point.
He's pretty bougie.
The season hasn't even... No, that's not the one I were looking for. This is from Como Park Garage Guy. Let me scroll down and get it in its entirety. Where were all these armchair coaches swinging from McCarthy's jock the past 6 months? Sounds like a bunch of frauds trying to get their 30 seconds of fame. Well, to be honest, The JJ Obos have been consistent. Now, they might be delusional, but I think they've been consistent. They have been swinging, you could say, for, I believe, quite some time. Yeah, I think it's 0-1, right? Didn't we say on the Kyler?
I think they had one
really bad.
He wasn't very good.
Playoff game. Palate cleanser question. Any chance of having Olivia Miles on your show? Well, I don't know. Who's to say? I don't know how available.
I feel like she hasn't done a ton.
Doesn't seem like she has. Yeah. She's done some TV stuff, nights of games, after games, etc. So we'll see. Maybe that's a possibility. Let's get into hour number 2. I mentioned former St. Cloud Police Chief Blair Anderson, frequent contributor to the program, will join in about a half hour to discuss several stories that I found kind of intriguing and kind of right up his area of expertise. We're guest-free other than that. I'm sure it's going to be quarterback intensive. We've got a couple of other controversies. One, actually a couple A-section. 2 Little League related. But how about when we come back, you have been clamoring for the Minnesota Timberwolves to have a chance not only to play on Christmas Day or night, but to host on Christmas Day or night. You are finally going to get your wish this upcoming December 25.
You're listening to Barreiro on The Fan.
From